Over the migrant crisis in this country. In New York City on Staten Island, that anger boiling over. Protesters pinned down, multiple arrests. And it's not just New York, multiple states tonight.
Tonight, tensions high across the country. Police pinning protesters down in New York City, arresting 10 people on Staten Island, many outraged over the influx of migrants into the city. From New York to Illinois to Arizona, states overwhelmed, buses arriving daily. In San Diego County, Border Patrol forced to release about 4,000 migrants in just the past week. Processing centers and shelters filled to capacity. Many dropped off at places like this bus stop. Local officials frustrated, demanding action in Washington. Lourdes, like so many here, making the dangerous journey. Down the border in Texas, new drone video showing a crush of migrants crossing the Rio Grande River into Eagle Pass, where today officials declared a state of emergency. And hundreds more are coming. Migrants today on top of this freight train, riding for miles to Ciudad Juarez, just across the border from El Paso.
9,000 migrants have crossed the southern border in just the past day. Live team coverage of this border crisis with reports covering the situation from the Texas border to Chicago and New York City. But
federal authorities saying that the uptick in these crossings is due to a disinformation campaign being spread by the cartels, as well as people becoming more desperate as they're waiting for appointments on the CBP One app, and they're deciding to take a gamble and not wait for the app to work for them. They're crossing illegally and taking their chances.
In El Paso, Texas, more arrivals of undocumented migrants daily. The same goes about 500 miles away down the Rio Grande and Eagle Pass. The reason, says the Border Patrol, migrants are being fed disinformation by cartel-controlled smugglers to cross now.
They're making money with the immigrants. They're making money with the drugs. So, they jumped at it real fast. And I know this because we have smugglers coming from Houston, Florida, Austin, everywhere, to pick up those immigrants. There's a connection there.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection telling Scripps News in a written statement that human smugglers are spreading disinformation about the border to migrants and are, quote, putting migrants' lives at risk for their own financial gain. Adding, rumors circulating on social media that areas of the southwest border, specifically in the El Paso sector, are open to illegal migration are patently false.
The president is granting temporary legal status to nearly 500,000 Venezuelan migrants who are already in this country. Now, this could be life-changing for those families looking to work and make money here legally. The move comes as the number of border crossings returns to near record levels. Federal officials closed the point of entry in Eagle Pass, Texas, just yesterday due to a glut of asylum requests. Manuel Bojorquez is in El Paso, where officials are seeing more than 1,800 migrants a day.
As first reported by CBS News, the Biden administration is granting temporary legal status to more than 470,000 Venezuelan migrants already in the U.S. The move promises to speed up their approvals for work permits. That 5,000 people streamed through in a day. The influx prompted the mayor to sign an emergency declaration, while in Arizona, hundreds were detained, some in makeshift cages. The influx is also being felt in states thousands of miles away.
Don't try to send people.
In New York, migrant arrivals have divided the city. Officials say $2 billion has been spent since last year to house more than 100,000 migrants bused to the city.
What do you call it when 10,000 people illegally cross the border in a single day?
So here's what I will say, and you heard me say this a couple times, and I'll say it again because it is the facts. On day one, the first day of this president's administration, he put forth a comprehensive immigration reform that we believe that was desperately needed for this country, right? As we know, and you've heard us say this many times before, we are dealing with a broken system. And no action was taken from Congress. And so what the president was able to do, he imposed consequences for those who do not have the legal basis to remain. And he has removed more than 250,000 individuals. This administration has done so since May 12th. And so we've taken action. The president has secured, he also secured record funding. And let's not forget, this record funding that the president fought for over the last year or so was opposed by the House Republicans. This is something that they opposed and didn't want to see. And so a broken system, it's been broken for the past couple of decades. The last administration certainly gutted the immigration system for 4 years. That's what they did. And you had Speaker McCarthy and the Republicans in Congress who continuously take steps to undermine what is currently happening, trying to undermine getting border security. We saw that. We saw that this week with the CR.
If I misread the room there, that's on me. But something that we heard them say today is that, yes, immigration, it's a problem that has been going on for many years. That is true. However, that includes 2.5 years of this administration. And just a few minutes ago, President Biden was at a gala in Washington, D.C., and he was talking about how the first piece of legislation that he put forward on his first day in office was this comprehensive immigration reform. They sent it to Congress, and it failed. So he is saying that border problems now are because Republicans voted against his day one immigration measure. They did vote against it. But in Washington, D.C., you are allowed to put legislation forward more than once. And so they keep going back to this day one, we tried, and it's not our fault anymore. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case, just if you look at the way that the system is set up. And I've been thinking a lot about this because last week and the week before, we were traveling internationally with the president. We were in India and Vietnam. And the process to get into a foreign country as an American, very complicated. You got to file a visa, you got to pay a fee, and then you got to go through a pretty comprehensive security checkpoint. None of that is happening here. And so there are international systems that are in place. The rules that you generally would expect as anybody who is traveling are not necessarily being followed. And this administration is not, they're not coming up with anything else. Like, it is a problem that keeps getting worse. 10,000 people in 24 hours is near an all-time high. That is not a problem that is getting better.
Oh, Biden's borders. How does it feel to be just flat out lied to when they say the border is closed and secure when we all know it's not, Peter?
They getting $7,000 a month, food stamps, vouchers, e-bikes, scooters. They taking jobs away from us.
To the latest on the migrant crisis.
A group of progressive state senators penning a letter to lay out measures they say should be taken to better address the issue.
Fox 5's Morgan McKay joins us now with details. And Morgan, one of their proposals involves raising taxes.
You're exactly right, Steve and Natasha. So numerous ideas have been tossed around over the past few weeks on ways the city and state can do more to support migrants, especially as the city is potentially staring down a $12 billion budget hole due to costs associated with housing and feeding migrants. The latest idea, raising taxes on the wealthy to help make up for some of these costs. Ari Brisport and 19 other Democratic Socialist lawmakers all wrote a letter blasting the city and state's response to the migrant crisis. The letter outlines numerous ways the city, state, and federal government can all step up to provide resources. One proposal on the state level is to increase taxes on the top 5% of New Yorkers to help pay for homeless and migrant services.
At the beginning of September, the number of migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border has climbed, and it has only continued to climb. And it is now pushing border towns to their limit. One of the busiest spots is right here in Arizona.
Border officials say they are stretched thin and to the limit, trying to process migrants and rescuing them at the same time from a forbidding desert. In fact, within the Tucson sector, agents tell us that they're responding to 10 to 20 911 calls every day.